Hello everyone, now this is a long video, so bear with me, and if you stick to the end, congratulations. So we have some high quality satellite images here which were released by Planet. These are from February the 8th and they show Russia's defensive networks around Svatove and Kreminna. Also of interest, we can see track marks on the snow which reveal where Russians may be lurking. I'm going to go through each image and then show its location on a map to give a general picture of the defensive fortifications here. I'm starting though with an image which isn't part of a defensive network, but may be the most important image, so I thought it best go first. Look at all these track marks here from vehicles manoeuvring, many of which eventually lead into trees. This, clearly, looks like a place where heavy equipment is hidden among the trees. You can see the random looking movements of the vehicles, they manoeuvre, reverse, change direction, etc. There's no trenches here, no defensive positions. You will note that many of the tracks lead to various places in the tree line. This is a staging ground for heavy equipment. Now, I can't pick out anything visible here at the moment, so this could be unused now, or Russia could move its heavy vehicles from place to place to hide, choosing a different hiding place each day, which makes sense rather than use the same one, which would bound to be clocked, tagged, and eventually targeted. But I'd say heavy vehicles definitely have been here and may possibly be here in the future. So this is definitely an area worth keeping an eye on. This is located here, just south of a town called Travneva. I'll show you later where this is in relation to the defensive fortifications of that sort of thing. So this first image, we can see that the layout is a wide anti-tank trench, followed by a gap of open ground, then a triple row of Dragon's Teeth anti-tank defences. On the northern side of the anti-tank trench, you can see there is an earthen mound. Now I have seen this before, and I always thought it would be better to put the earthen barrier on the opposite side of the trench. A Ukrainian assault on this defensive position will come from the north, and having the earth piled up there means all we have to do is sort of bulldoze it into the trench to fill it in. There's also a small row of white squares which I've labelled as unknown, but they're more than likely those little concrete pillboxes we've seen, but I cannot say for sure. This is quite an active area, as there are many track marks from vehicle movements in and around it. I can't tell what these track marks are from. They could be vehicles bypassing it, vehicles delivering supplies to it, or they could be from excavators which were used constructing it. This is located here, southeast of Svatove, so preparations in case Svatove is liberated, as it is, at the moment, still occupied by Russia. The next image is just to the south of it and is a bit more interesting as it gives some idea as to Russia's defensive tactics. So we can see troop positions pointing north. These are positioned just in front of a hedgerow. These are too small for vehicles, so if this trench was ever needed, we would see troops here, likely with machine guns mounted. Just behind the trenches are what looks like equipment piles. They could be sleeping areas too. I honestly can't tell. We can also see track marks, so we know, thanks to the snow, the route that vehicles heading to this trench, whether excavators or supply trucks, head this direction. As we can see here, this position is located extremely close to the first one. So the defensive plan is, while Ukraine tries to cross the anti-tank trench and manoeuvre past the Dragon's Teeth, troops in these trenches will just mallet them with everything they've got. A key flaw in the plan seems to be that these are static trenches, and Ukraine clearly knows they're here. I mean, us at home know they're here, so Ukraine is bound to. It wouldn't be too difficult, I guess, just to pound these trenches with artillery first, and then tackle the anti-tank trench and the Dragon's Teeth. I can't see these being too much of an obstacle, unless there's some hidden surprises like mines to deal with. Before we move on to the next image, I thought I'd quickly check where those tracks lead to. So they head into this small copse of trees which leads to a bit of barren land, and just south of it is an east to west road. Now I have to wonder why this route was taken to get to the trenches, rather than just cutting directly north across the field from the road. It makes me wonder if indeed the aforementioned mines are buried in this area, and the tracks are the safe route. It's definitely a possibility. In this image here, we have another row of defensive trenches. These ones are facing west. This is a bog standard road of trenches. These are situated near a road and you can clearly see some clear tracks leading through the defensive position. 3 tracks heading the same direction west, another heading west but slightly more north from a different vehicle. The first 3 I would guess are part of the same convoy. These pass directly through the position, so aren't from excavators. I hope Ukraine has eyes on this area, as it could be a regular route for traffic. Could be a supply line headed to Svatove, but if we check the map here, I can't see why supply convoys wouldn't just use the direct road heading into Svatove. I'm inclined to think this may be howitzers or rocket launchers heading to a firing position. It is just fields northwest of this position. Anything heading through or towards Svatove would just use the road, so whatever it was heading somewhere into the fields, I think. Also on this map, we can see this is south of the positions we've just looked at. I have now started labelling them 1 to 3. Next image, another line of defensive trenches with some trees and bushes for cover. These are slightly larger, and if we zoom in the firing positions here, we can see look larger and bigger. The trenches aren't as deep either. If we compare the two, the first trench is all linked distinctly together, and the firing positions are smaller. Trench 2 isn't really a network of deep trenches as such, rather more a bumper of spaced apart trenches of dug in positions linked with a shallow trench. I wonder if this is intended for artillery or vehicles rather than troops. So its location is interesting. It's north and west of position 3. Remember the tracks that we saw? They looked like they were more than likely headed here. So I'm definitely thinking that this could be an artillery emplacement. I could be wrong of course, but it appears likely. On this image we can see large anti-tank trench with a triple row of dragon's teeth behind it. We can also see some large dug-in positions which look like they could be for howitzers. They seem too big for me to be troops. There are 3 of them, connected by a shallow trench, but I could be wrong. Here they are shown on the map, so south of number 4. Next image we have another troop position. Again, note how deep these trenches are and how interlinked they are compared to the previous 2, which makes me think again those past 2 are for artillery, or at least serve a different purpose than for infantry, maybe even a mortar position. This one, interestingly, the firing positions are covering the south. This is towards areas fully controlled by Russia, but if we turn to deep states, this is likely covering the possibility of a Ukrainian push from the south like so. The next image is very interesting. This shows Milovatka airfield. This is a small private aerodrome, but we can see it's a hive of activity. Many vehicle tracks and the like around the aerodrome's small building. So this place looks to be clearly in use by Russia, maybe as a command post of some sort. But this definitely looks like a potential place to be visited by Mr. HIMARS. The building is small, only 20 metres long, so it won't be a substantial base, but Russia is clearly using it for some purpose or another. I would say likely some sort of field HQ. It's here, number 7 on the map, so it's separated from a defensive trench network which we can see west of the big anti-tank trench. The next image isn't quite as interesting. It's a bog standard zigzagged infantry trench, but its location, which is on screen now. So this is north of the vehicle staging area, which we looked at first. You can see the other trenches to the south, so we're now getting some rough idea of this defensive network shape. I'll look at it more when I go through the final few images. Next up, quite an interesting one. Here we can see a small bit of forest ringed by defensive trenches on the west, south and slightly to the northern side. In the trees, marked number 1, we can see a couple of other small trenches just behind the first defensive line. I believe this could be a mortar position. It's quite small and doesn't seem like a place where heavy vehicles would be stored or where howitzers would fire from. This is, as you will see, outside of the northernmost trench which we've just looked at, so it isn't part of those defences and doesn't seem to serve any strategic purpose. Another possibility, it could be a refuelling or rearming field station. You could see that some of the tracks go right through this little base. So if there is fuel or ammo stored there, it could be where the vehicles are topped up. Either way, this is another spot which I would say definitely needs hitting. Here we have a good old artillery position. You can clearly see the large vehicle berths along this trench, 4 in total. Now there are no tracks leading to or from it, so it hasn't been used recently. It could have been dug in preparation for future artillery missions, it could be an old one, or, more likely, Russia rotates positions to avoid being targeted. Given its position, here, circled or rather squared, this could have even been dug in preparation for a defence of Svatove, as it's just on the outskirts of the city. I have 2 more images to go now, and thanks for sticking with me while I waffle on about trenches. There are a lot of them in this video, but worth a look I thought. This one is quite substantial, an infantry trench with a number of firing positions covering the west. No vehicle tracks or signs of activity can be seen here. The map is getting cluttered, but it is here, number 11, so I have marked every position we have looked at so far. 7 is the building near the airfield, 8 the northern trench, 9 the possible mortar position, 10 the artillery position. Finally, we have this curious little place. So this is around a clump of trees. We have infantry defensive trenches on the western side, but then on the eastern side a number of large square positions. These don't look to be for howitzers. I wonder if this could be a large mortar position. It's the only thing I can think of. Seeing this one here, I'm going to revise the previous mortar position which I discussed. In hindsight, I think the past one was more likely a refuel or resupply spot for vehicles. This one definitely looks more like a possible mortar battery. It's marked on the map now, just south of the vehicle track marks in the clearing. So that's it for the satellite images. Thanks for sticking with me for this long video. The end map is as this. So we have a supply depot, at least that's what I think it is to the north. Just east of Svatove, we have a clear artillery position. The red lines on this map indicate defensive trenches, so the north, west, and even the south are covered here. Also, is 1, possibly 3 positions for howitzers. Of most interest to me is the clearing surrounded by woodland full of vehicle tracks. That is clearly a staging post for vehicles, and I do wonder if there still may be some among the trees. Another key bit of interest is the building near the airfield. We saw that's in use by Russia, and I would guess it's a field HQ. That's bound to be a prime target. The possible resupply depot too, given the vehicle tracks, looks clearly to be in use at the moment. So hopefully we hear about that getting targeted. And now I've just zoomed out overall just so you can see its position, so we can see that it's pretty much all of these are towards the east of Svatove. I'll now turn to deep states just to show where Svatove is in relation to the front lines. So it's on the northeastern front, Svatove city itself, a distance of 15.71 kilometres from the front. These trenches would be a little bit further away, but are still within range of HIMARS and even bog standard artillery. I have put all of the base images on Patreon for free, so if you want to check them out at your leisure, you can find them on there. No need to sign up to view them, just click on the page, scroll down a little bit, and you should see them. So that's it for this video. Thanks for sticking with a long one. If you found it interesting, please click like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Thanks again, and take care everybody.